Madame Mayor of Paris, Madam Secretary General of Foreign Affairs, Chief of Staff of the Army, directors, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen in your respective capacities, thank you for being present here today. In recent years, we have met, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has in recent years changed the date of this gathering. And this is an opportunity to express my best wishes to you for the new year, my best wishes to yourselves, to your families, to your staff in our embassies, wherever you defend the voice of France. And in recent years, I also gave a very long speech, which lasted several hours, where I covered various topics of global interest. And so this year I decided not to give a speech. And that is why, on the minister's request, I organized 3 round tables where I was able to engage in dialogue with the ambassadors on 3 key topics: European issues, Africa with an upcoming summit, and G7 and the BRICS. But the minister still wanted me to make a speech in addition to the roundtable. So I will say, before I begin, this is not a speech. This will be very short, much shorter than in previous years. Just to reassure you, because it's getting late, I have expressed my best wishes and my gratitude for all that you do. And I wanted to share with you a few of my firm beliefs. I won't go over every single matter of interest, but I thought it was important to share with you some of my deep-seated beliefs. Now, we know the facts. I discussed them last year and the year before that, and I think what I said last year fully stands. We are living in an unbalanced world. Multilateralism and its institutions are undermined. And we have major global powers that are seeking to divide the world amongst themselves. And I think the events of recent days has only confirmed that. And that is the great risk in the international order in which we live. The US is an established power which is gradually turning away from some of its allies and giving up on established rules, whether it is in trade, security, or elsewhere. And China is still a rising power, which needs to select a diverse range of partners, but its trade policy is increasingly aggressive, in particular post-COVID, and this is undermining the European economy. And then we also have destabilizing powers, such as Russia, in Ukraine and elsewhere, as well as their interference. And I could mention Iran and others too. And given that context, we have a weakening of all of the institutions within which we could discuss these issues, the forums in which we cooperate. We are in a world where might is right, and perhaps Europe is the only forum now where we can reaffirm these values and these rules that are so dear to us. What I said last year remains true on the reactionary international order. And we are in a curious situation today where the French and the Europeans are hearing anti-colonial rhetoric, which does not align with our actual practice. And meanwhile, we see a neo-colonial aggressiveness coming from other quarters. And I believe that if we remain consistent and show our determination in our action, well, that will be fruitful. But we will need to hold the course. And in that context, I think that there are two behaviors that do not align with us. First of all, applying the rule of might is right and becoming vassals to these powers, that does not align neither with our interests nor with our values. Another choice would be perhaps to say, and that can be tempting, would be to say, well, we can't do anything about it, but let us continue to say what we believe is right. That is not the right option either. The only thing that is tenable would be to recognize that there are deep imbalances where might is right is seeking to assert itself. But we should underline that actually we're much stronger than we think if we come together. And at the heart of our action is the idea that we should continue to strengthen ourselves, to focus on building Europe, to defend our interests, to grow our influence. Anywhere we can defend effective multilateralism, and that we do so firmly and entirely. And it is my firm belief that we, neither you as ambassadors, as directors, or ministers, or myself, we are not here to lament or to comment on the state of the world. We are here to take action, and there is one path to follow in the world as it stands today. And we have a great deal of strengths because we invested in our military much earlier than others, because we have a strategic military autonomy much more than others, and that is a strength. We have a culture of strategy which is incredibly strong, and our agenda has been taken forward. And we also have a unique diplomatic status, which is also a singular opportunity. But perhaps we'll have to shake up some of our habits, all while behaving in a pragmatic fashion. We need to fully assert our diplomatic ambition, which is to defend our interests, our influence, and not to concede power to vassalization, nor think that we're going to be a powerless moral entity. And so I wanted to focus on, first of all, how we are setting out our interests and working on them. Our first interest is peace and security, which was imperiled in recent years by the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine. That is fundamental for us as the French and the Europeans. And 48 hours ago, with the coalition of the willing, we were able to demonstrate that we can take action. We are right to support Ukraine, and we shall continue to do so. We took major decisions in Europe at the end of last year, and we shall continue to do so. And again, we need to wake up. Today, the entirety of financial aid to Ukraine is provided by the coalition of the willing. The entirety of that support. Now, of course, there are some dependencies, but the entirety of that funding is from us. And 1 year ago, when I stood before you, we wondered whether the US was going to leave us. We said, what would we do without them? How can we negotiate peace without them? In February, there was that meeting in the Oval Office that everyone remembered. Well, February was when we launched the Coalition of the Willing. It came together in Paris, and we came up with something unprecedented. So it is possible, and through that coalition, we are defending our interests. We, Europeans and our allies, Norway, the UK, and Canada, their prime ministers were in France 2 days ago. We are bringing that support today, and we have built security guarantees for a post-war Ukraine. And we need to continue working along those lines. Who knows when the war will end? We support the US's diplomatic efforts, and I'd like to acknowledge what the US diplomacy is doing. But it's important that our interests be taken into account. We cannot sacrifice Ukrainian territory, and those interests are being looked after by the Coalition of the Willing. This is a true strategic and capacity-based revolution, and this is something we will be consolidating because it is important to be patient. We need to wish for peace every day, spare no effort to build it. But ever since the US engaged in these diplomatic efforts a year ago, it has seemed that Russia doesn't actually want peace. They may try to convince us that they do, but we haven't yet seen the evidence. So we need to continue working along these lines. What French diplomacy and the French armed forces have shown with the Coalition of the Willing, so Joint Chief of Staff in Paris, along with the UK. And this is a true change. This is consolidation. This is common action. And again, our role is not to issue commentary. It's to take action. Second, a Europe focused on defense. When we started talking about it, people said, oh, but what about NATO? And it took a long time to be able to negotiate that. And still, since 2022, we were able to assert Europe's strategic autonomy since the French presidency of the European Council. And European defense is also a reality. There was a summit in March of last year. There have been white papers, documents issued by the European Commission, as well as financial instruments with a European, a preference for European procurement, which has also been set out. And that is a fundamental step. And I now expect two things. I would like this to be reflected in the way we approach our capabilities. So our army and our chiefs of staff should be able to think as well in terms of how this can be applied. Think Europe, not just think French. So we have these instruments, we have these policies, and now that needs to be an opportunity for greater innovation, greater technology, in order to de-risk, to be more independent from the US as well as increase profits for our companies, because Europe also needs to be a source of value. Second, we want to defend our economic interests. And we have a dual issue here: Chinese aggressiveness and US tariffs. Having both at the same time is a challenge. And that has not been addressed to the correct extent. The truth is that even countries that had a trade surplus with China now have a deficit. And last year, 50,000 industrial jobs in Germany were lost to that Chinese aggressiveness. Now, of course, there have been a number of imbalances, and perhaps I'll come back to that. But the Draghi report, which we did not fully comply with, is already outdated because it did not take into account this acceleration. China is going much faster in industry, including vis-à-vis Europe, and the US has applied tariffs, including on Europe. We hadn't expected it, but that is what happened. And so our economic agenda should be very simple. Number one, protection. Protection is not protectionism, but it is accepting that we are not just a market, we are a trade and industrial power that needs to protect itself from unfair trade. And just as I was saying for European defense, we're starting to see progress on this front. We used to be completely isolated speaking about protection in the EU. But now the European Commission has also started speaking the same language on steel, on cars, and this is a conceptual revolution. We need to see this in action, and we also need, as Europeans, to better protect our borders in order to favor European players. We need safeguarding clauses. We need mirror clauses. Because we should be opening our markets to people who respect our rules. That's the only way to receive support from our producers. And it's important to listen to them as well. We have over-regulated our own stakeholders. We haven't protected our economy enough, in particular when conditions are unfair. And so we need to give precedence to Europe. We need to have safeguarding clauses, and we need to think of Europe not just as a market, but a trade power of 450 million people and consumers who want agreements. But we wish to respect others and be respected in turn. And Canada, Mexico, and the US do this for themselves. There's nothing wrong with it, but let's do it too. And if we don't, European deindustrialization will take place on a large scale. It is actually underway, and it has accelerated. So we need to accelerate our own agenda, and one of our priorities is, of course, to come up with a budget, but also to roll out a protection and European preference policy this year. And that requires greater simplification and competitiveness. So simplify the single market, the capital unions market, because there are far too many divisions in Europe. And thank you to the Vice President for supporting this, because it's so essential, given that we want to align with the US. And the third pillar is investing in innovation in our national budgets, but above all in the EU budget. We must invest far greater amounts in innovation, AI, quantum, space, and green tech. Europe has cards to play, but it is made vulnerable by public and private underinvestment. And so we need to invest far more and far swifter in order to defend our interests. And I would like you to be the voice of this agenda in Brussels and in your capitals. We need to give new impetus to our diplomatic and economic efforts. In order to achieve that, we need our economic stakeholders to do far more. And in some parts of Europe, a type of investment came about, but we need to be much faster. In any event, our strategic economic interests need to be a priority in the context I've just described.
The third element is our democratic program, of course. I'd also call it an intellectual program. Faced with the chaos of the world, Europe is surrounded on the one hand by authoritarian regimes and on the other hand by algorithms that threaten us. We will continue to follow a program to protect our young people, our youth. The government has tabled an initiative in this matter, but we will also protect the values that Europe represents: academic freedom, the freedom of science, the possibility to have an information space that is well managed, where opinions can be shared freely, and where choices are not made by algorithms belonging to the few. So we need to defend, we need to consolidate this European shield under the European Commission, and we, as France, will continue leading this key agenda. I won't say much more, but you've understood it very well. The first point is our military, our international defense. We need to defend our results as well. These last years, the French agenda has been able to take hold in Europe. Texts are changes, methods are changing, but we have two challenges now. Things have to go faster, and we must be able to reap as much reward from these actions. We must be much more active, especially through our industrial actors, and our economic diplomacy needs to defend all these points. Now, the next element I wanted to highlight is our influence in this context, in this world in upheaval, faced with these aggressive players. We still believe in partnerships, and it's not just empty words, it is something that we translated into concrete actions. And I wanted to defend this idea, this philosophy, and its efficiency. We need partnerships in defense, in our strategic defense. We need to implement this strategic partnership with Europe for France and for Europe. We have also signed agreements with the Indo-Pacific, a treaty that was signed in 2010 in India, and it brings together India, Indonesia, Australia, and other players who are unprecedented partners when it comes to defense, when it comes to security, to AI, in the field of economy, in the field of climate change, and the transition. These are solid partners. And our policies with these partners in the Asia-Pacific region is very important. These are players who said that they did not want to be the vassals of other players. So we need to respect sovereignty and do so by creating new alliances. If you look at the figures, they speak for themselves. This is working. So please involve yourself in this strategy. It needs to be consolidated. Third element, we need to build a new partnership, a partnership in the Mediterranean basin. You have seen that there are tensions between different players there, which have made this task more difficult, but the goal remains the same. We have a solid relationship with Egypt, with Lebanon as well. We're organizing a conference for the Lebanese armed forces and for the economic rebuilding of the country. The rebirth of our democracy with Morocco, which has been very positive as well. So we have many assets in the area. And France's diplomatic choice last year to recognize the state of Palestine and to launch an initiative that attracted dozens of partners in that field. The New York Declaration, all these things gave us a credibility in the Near and Middle East, in the Mediterranean, and far beyond. And this was unprecedented. And it is in line with the historic image of France. And so in terms of partnership, we have to reinvest in this region in the months ahead. So I have high expectations of you. I really believe in the solidity of this plan and the potential that it holds, especially as well with our partners in the Gulf region, who are strategic military and economic partners of ours. Other important partnership is that with Africa. Now, we've completely changed the rulebook since the Ouagadougou conference. And now it is a partnership between equals. What was at first seen as giving up on Africa was completely wrong. We have rebalanced, we have struck a new balance in our partnership. We have rebuilt our military partnership, which is efficient and up-to-date, and it's shown how effective it is in Benin and in other countries. We have worked on different themes with the youth, with entrepreneurship, with sport, and so on and so forth. We have a cultural agenda that is completely unprecedented, and this has allowed us to find a new balance. And we also want to mobilize the diaspora. Our African partnership is essential. And in 2026, we need to accelerate this work more with the African diaspora. We will also have the Nairobi summit, which is an important event which will allow us to showcase this revolutionary approach to be able to work on entrepreneurship and youth and so on. And so this, I have also invited Prime Minister Modi and Chancellor Merz to join us in Nairobi, which also shows this change of an approach towards Africa. So for Africa, we need to move forward, consolidate our partnerships. I mentioned a few examples. I said Morocco, for example, but I could have also said how strong our relationship is with South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya.
Les grandes crises du Soudan et de la Corne de l'Afrique au Grand Lac.
And we will continue working on crisis areas from the Great Lake region to the Corn of Africa. But we need to strengthen our credibility, our influence, thanks to the diplomatic choices and investments that have been made these last years.
Là où nous avons besoin d'améliorer les choses, c'est dans l'implication du monde économique en Afrique.
We also need economic actors to invest more in Africa, because in many ways we're doing exactly the opposite of what we need to do. We've reinvented the diplomatic relationship to make it more easily understandable, but too many industrial players have pulled out of African investment. So I'm asking you to help increase investment in the country. 10 years ago, we were a major investor in Africa. That has changed since. Others have replaced us. So I've asked the ministers to try and change things, to try and attract more and more French companies to Africa, those who want to invest, those who are not keen on doing so. We don't really need them there. But we need startups, we need small and medium enterprises, those who have the gusto and the gumption to invest on the continent. This is a fundamental priority for us. Now, I would have a lot more to say on partnerships, but that is the most important element I wanted to share with you. Another point is the instruments of our influence to defend our interests. Firstly, we need to consolidate everything that we've done when it comes to fighting disinformation under the authority of the Prime Minister. A lot of work has been done. This work can be diplomatic, it can be military, it's interministerial, but we cannot lose the battle of the narratives. We need to fight disinformation. We need to defend what we are about. In all honesty, I unfortunately have to see that many French actors have decided not to defend the French narrative. And on the other hand, we are attacked by many people who reproach us for being colonial. But the new colonial powers are using an anti-colonial discourse to push their agendas forward. So we need to fight back against these things. I'm also asking the minister to strengthen economic diplomacy, but beyond Africa, which I mentioned, we need to build a program that's based on sovereignty, on production, on diversifying our supply chains and our partners. And this new program has to be adapted to the new context that we are in right now. And more generally, when it comes to our partnerships, we need to maybe revise the methods, the means, and the instruments that we deploy. So I'd like to also commend the initiative of Business France and all their partners who have managed to get results in terms of exports and in raising France's attractiveness. Last point I'd like to mention is that of international cooperation. And in this era where we see the law of the jungle rearing its ugly head again, I have always defended with you the values of multilateralism. This is something that I continue to believe in, and what we are witnessing now actually strengthens my belief in this approach. And so I'll mention a few important dates of the year ahead. It is, I believe, in our interest, and something that strengthens our own defense, is defending multilateralism. I think the place that we hold in the multilateral system is important. The role that we've had within this system is something that is good for us. So it's in our interest to defend an efficient multilateral system. So faced with the defeatist discourse, people who give up faced with what is going on, we need to see what we have achieved. Last year we had a summit of artificial intelligence in Paris. The whole world came to see us here. We had Prime Minister Modi. Next month I'm going to be in India as well to follow up on our efforts. We've managed to create with India an international agreement, which is at the heart of multilateralism, something that believes in innovation, but also wishes to see fair regulation. But this is a success of our diplomatic work, of our work with our partners. We also organized the Oceans Summit. This was also a great success for French diplomacy. The treaty for the regulation of the high seas was something that was expected for many, many years, and it's the fruit of our collective efforts. Last time it took us 2 years to ratify a treaty like this. Well, this time we ratified it in Nice, thanks to French diplomacy. A treaty that protects marine areas and the seabed. So these things work, but to do that we need to find allies and we need to respect all the players. And we need to see that those who feel crushed between these major powers are looking for a place where they can be respected. So we need a fair balance in a good multilateral system that will bring together many countries that want to be respected, that want globalization based on clear international rules, that do not want to give in to might is right. We can attract all these people, and this is something that works. And we can continue to do this thanks, among other things, to the actions that you've carried out these last years. So we will strengthen this multilateral agenda in various fields, including in that of fighting climate change and defending biodiversity. We worked with the UK and other partners on biodiversity. We need to fight against plastics as well, which is a priority for me in 2026. And we need to keep consolidating the climate biodiversity program, including through the One Planet summits, which are an example of this functioning multilateralism. Secondly, health is important to us. We had the One Health approach, and in this period where the World Health Organization is being undermined, we need to bring together countries, which is what we're doing in April. And this will once again be an opportunity to defend this strategic and functioning multilateralism. This will happen in Lyon. Like I said, we will also continue strengthening our strategic partnership with India in February, and we also need to continue to cooperate on rare earths and minerals. We started doing this through the G7. We have a European strategy, but we need to be more inclusive and we need to globalize this strategy more. And on top of that, we also have certain other important dates. There's the French presidency of the G7, which will put us at the heart of this new relationship to multilateralism. We'll have a very unique role. And I'd like to explain to you how I see this very quickly. I'd like to thank all the teams, all the embassies that have been piloting this work. So at the heart of our presidency of the G7, the main issues are this world out of kilter and this macroeconomic imbalance. All these conflicts that I've mentioned, everything that we've been faced with these last years, what is it linked to? It's linked to the US, who has various deficits, economic and budgetary. It's also faced with the problem with Europe, that's not investing enough. And on the other hand, there's China, which produces a lot but does not consume enough of its own products. So the only way to answer these imbalances is through cooperation. If we answer through a tariff war, we will not, or overproduction, we will not be able to win. So we need to have a political convergence between partners and find answers that are cooperative. We need to encourage China to consume more within their own markets, but also invest more in Europe, where we can have more cooperative exchanges of technology. We also need to encourage Europeans to have more of a better investment policy. And second priority, while we're dealing with these global imbalances, we also need to fight against the fragmentation of the world. The G7 should not be an anti-China club or a anti-BRICS club. We can't let the BRICS to become an anti-G7 club either. And India, being president of the BRICS countries, I hope to be able to work with them to be able to create bridges on these different fronts in order to build cooperation, to find the capacity for resilience, to consider the BRICS countries in a more inclusive way. And I think the priorities that you've given the BRICS are the same that we should have within the G7. So bringing together this club is something that's important, and working with BRICS is essential given the demographic and economic weight of these important countries. So bridging these groups, the G7 and the BRICS, is a very important priority for me. The G7 has to really be able to create a way forward to fight against these imbalances, on these macroeconomic, economic imbalances, on the one hand, and to be able to create these bridges with BRICS. And then there are three fields of multilateralism which I think were important for us.
One is the security instruments crisis. We mentioned it earlier. We need to rethink our multilateralism when it comes to security. And I think France and Europe can do that. We have our culture, we have our history. We defended UNIFIL playing an important role in Lebanon. But there is a kind of fatigue when it comes to major peacekeeping operations. And so this is an opportunity for us, the French and the Europeans, to come up with new instruments, to work with regional organizations, to create new peacekeeping structures, and to operate new initiatives. Second, there is the development aid crisis. Now, I defend our policy, which has been subject to attacks. But the truth is that there is an ODA crisis, the withdrawal of the United States, and the rhetoric across the world has generated stress. In 2021, we had the summit on the financing of African economies. 2023, we had the summit in Paris with the 4 Ps. And so the time has come to rethink and to take forward the work we did with AFD to rethink sustainable development and to work more with the private sector, as we have already started to do, but not quickly enough. It is not enough to simply conclude in the face of this withdrawal that the end times are near. No, the time has come to come up with new partnerships, as is the case, as I said, for defense. And the next issue is international governance, which is a broad topic. And it would be naive to say that all is well when I have just told you how chaotic it is. That might is right seems to be reigning, and people are wondering if Greenland is about to be invaded or if Canada is about to become the 51st state, or if Taiwan is under threat. Many of you discussed this with me. Actually, on the contrary, I think that times are right to reform international governance, and perhaps it is the only opportunity to do so. And perhaps the right time has come to get more involved with the United Nations. Given that the number 1 member no longer believes in it, the second has less faith in it, and people are questioning all the values that we have defended on a daily basis. Because we cannot remain members of an organization that is starting to disappear. How can that be? Neither can we remain mere spectators. And as I said, we're not here as commentators. We are here to take action. We have an answer to bring. And should we not have a solution, we come up with something else. We should defend ourselves in the relevant fora, as we have always done. We have defended our beliefs. Now, France, given what it is doing in Ukraine, with Palestine and across the world, is in a position to speak up. And one of the things we'd like to do with the G7 and any other major powers who wish to do so, who are actually losing out in the face of crumbling international governance, is in fact to undertake that reform and that reconstruction. Otherwise, the world will completely fragment. And that is why, within the G7 and beyond the summit, we need to take that initiative and reform international governance and reform the international order, to do so with strength, determination, alongside the major powers that shall choose to do so with us. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the main messages I wanted to share with you. First of all, I wanted to thank you for the work you do every day. Thank you in particular to the ambassadors working in countries at war or under great diplomatic pressure in unstable contexts. Thank you to you and your teams. Please do believe in what we are trying to do. Do not fall prey to commentary or defeatist attitudes. No. On the contrary, the decisions that we took in recent years were right. What we were able to achieve for France and Europe went in the right direction. Greater strategic autonomy, lower reliance on the United States and China. Military, technological, economic, scientific power, defining our interests across the board. A reliable actor in a context of globalization, working with its partners. All of that has been tested and validated. And in the face of growing violence in the world, we should accelerate this existing agenda. So be proud of what you have achieved and be determined in the face of all that remains to do, because we need to redouble our efforts. What we did with the Coalition of the Willing, what we will continue to do in keeping with the various points I have mentioned, because France needs to be respected. France is true to its word. France does not threaten its allies and partners. In fact, France respects them all. And through all that we have built, we have also shown our consistency, we have shown our reliability, we have shown that we can be counted on. And sometimes we're not the strongest, often we're not the largest, but we commit to what we do. And that is a value you can defend. Because we refuse this new colonialism and new imperialism, but we also refuse vassalization and defeatism. When we make a commitment, we deliver, and that has great value for our diplomacy, for our companies and our strategic interests, wherever they may be. Thank you very much. Long live the Republic, long live France.
Mm-hmm.